Hello, and welcome to OEG Voices.
OEG Global Voices.
OEG Voices.
OEG Voices.
A podcast bringing you the voices and ideas of open educators from around the world.
OEG Voices is produced by Open Education Global,
a member-based non-profit organization
supporting the development and use of open education globally.
Learn more about us at oeglobal.org.
There's much to take in at global level.
We hope to bring you closer to how open education is working
by hearing the stories of practitioners
told in their own voices.
Each episode introduces you to a global open educator,
and we invite you to later engage in conversation with them
in our OEG Connect community.
Welcome to a most special episode of OEG Voices, a podcast from Open Education Global.
Вітаю в цьому спеціальному особливому епізоді від Open Education Global Voices, голоси відкритої освіти глобальної. Вітаю в записі цього епізоду.
I am your humble host, Alan Levine, here on the midpoint of Open Education Week.
Алан Левін, наш хост, наш господар сьогоднішньої зустрічі посеред великого тижня, присвяченого відкритій освіті.
And this episode is most special because during this week, we open our recording studio to guests to listen and be part of the conversation.
І цей епізод ще більш особливий, тому що цього тижня ми також відкриваємо нашу студію звукозапису гостям, які будуть слухати запис нашого подкасту разом.
This is even more special because here with us today on International Women's Day is someone who personifies resilience in open education.
Але цей епізод ще більш особливий, ніж зазвичай, що сьогодні з нами хтось дуже особливий, особливо в цей Міжнародний жіночий день, хто уособлює оцю боротьбу і стійкість в сфері відкритої освіти.
As you notice, we are speaking with the translation help into Ukrainian with the help of librarian Mira.
Як ви вже помітили, ми говоримо за допомогою перекладача мене, тобто також бібліотекаря, яка працює у сфері відкритої освіти, Міри Балжук.
I wish to say hello, привет, to Tetiana Kolesnykova, the director of the scientific library at the Ukraine State University of Science and Technologies in Dnipro.
І Алан хоче привітатися з Тетяною Колесниковою. Хочу сказати це українською мовою. Привіт. Тетяна є директором наукової бібліотеки Українського університету науки та технологій, якщо я правильно сказала.
Привіт, Тетяна.
Це вірно. Привіт.
Привіт. Not more than a year ago, Tetiana's day, life, work, and everything was upturned by the Russian invasion, an act of war on our country.
Рік тому робота Тетяни та її колег була повністю поставлена з ніг на голову через вторгнення Російської Федерації в її країну.
We will talk later with our colleagues, Paola and Mira, about the way they established a connection with Tetiana to assist during the war. But first we want to hear from Tetiana herself.
Ми пізніше також поговоримо з колегами Тетяни, з Мірою та Паолою про те, як вони разом співпрацювали, допомагали та колегам під час війни. Але спочатку, звичайно, ми з радістю почуємо саму Тетяну.
And Mira, please tell me to slow down, as I am very excited to speaking with Tetiana.
Totally fine. The good tempo.
Okay. Tetiana, before February 22nd last year, what did a normal day look for you as director of the Library of Science?
Тетяно, перед лютим минулого року, як виглядав ваш звичний день як директор академічної бібліотеки, наукової бібліотеки вашого університету? Яким він був до початку повномасштабного вторгнення?
Згадувати про це вже от на сьогодні, через рік, після того, як почалася ця страшна...
Thinking about it now, reminiscing about it now, a year on, is a little bit easier than it was just a year ago, because by now, Ukrainian librarians in particular have come to terms with the new reality of living under constant threat of air raid attacks, air raid alarms, hiding in bomb shelters, and so on. They have adjusted in their own way. She can think back and she can go back in her thoughts to those more peaceful times.
І хочу ще трошки сказати, що навіть ще півроку тому, навіть 7-8 місяців, коли ми з Паулою і Мірою торкалися цієї теми, то вони є свідками, мені дуже важко було говорити спокійно. І ми навіть спілкувалися, коли я була в підвалі, це було під час тривог. Зараз я можу вже говорити достатньо спокійно і без зайвих емоцій.
As mere 6-7 months ago, when we would raise this topic and talk about anything related to the topic, Tetiana would get quite emotional. When she was cooperating with Paola, with myself, she would be very often in very dire circumstances, in a bomb shelter or somewhere far away from windows, not to be affected by explosions. Nowadays, the situation is a bit calmer and she can speak with a bit calmer heart and less emotionally, at least. And when we go back in time to February 2022, just before the full-scale invasion happened, so that was just business as usual before that, of course. They were busy, as any other university library in the world, busy preparing a report for the previous year, for 2021. They were busy talking about future opportunities, development possibilities for the library and for the staff.
Ми якраз обговорювали саме тему нашої майбутньої конференції, яка є міжнародною, вона в нас проходить кожного року. І чомусь нам так захотілося, щоб це була така тема, яка відображала би в кризовий час, яка діяльність є університетських бібліотек.
And they were just busy assessing the potential topic for the university-based conference, international conference that their university hosts. It's an annual event, happens in September, October of each year. And for some reason, they were thinking of dedicating the central theme of the conference to, the crisis times, education, research in times of crisis.
І, безумовно, ми мали на увагу, як йде наше університетське життя в дистанційному форматі. Ми мали на увазі, що це життя в умовах глобального наступу COVID-19. Тому всі послуги, які ми планували або хотіли удосконалити, або пред'являли до себе претензії, що в нас щось не получалося, і ми хотіли щось поставити на стоп, а щось продовжувати далі, то це, безумовно, була прив'язка тільки до таких кризових умов в умовах епідемії.
And of course, back then, what they had in mind by education and research in times of crisis was mainly crisis affected by COVID, by global pandemic, and by remote teaching and learning. So they had to rethink some of the services they were providing to the faculty, to staff, to students. They had to repurpose and reimagine some ways of working. They had some self-assessment to do. So that was the context, and it had nothing to do with thoughts of the imminent war back at that time.
Я хотіла би ще сказати, що в нас дуже багато всіх сервісів і всіх продуктів, з якими ми працювали, продуктів, які створює бібліотека, протягом останніх 10 років вони стосувались саме відкритості.
And Tetiana would like to add, it's important for her that this is also said, that most of the services and products they've been developing in the last 10 years have had something to do with the topic of openness. Openness and open was in the center of everything they've been developing and working on.
Тому якщо саме поставити себе, що було 23 лютого 2002 року, то це був звичайний наш робочий день, але, звісно, вже такий неспокій, тривога, вони оточували всю нашу діяльність. Але, ви знаєте, це ж у всіх так, коли захоплюєшся роботою, коли є дуже багато тих речей, які ти повинен зробити дуже швидко, бо від цього залежить довіра наших студентів, наших викладачів до бібліотеки, то ми не дуже звертаємо уваги на оцю тривогу.
Yeah, to sum up, the day before the war started, so on the 23rd of February, just the day before it started, They, of course, felt some tension and anxiety around. Everybody felt it, of course. But Tetiana and her colleagues are so much involved into what they're doing. They find it so meaningful and so important to actually keep the trust and will serve the community that trusts them, the community of teachers, students, that they were more engrossed into work and into the ongoing library business back at that time.
Ну, це що було ваше питання, Алан, що було до того? От я якби відповіла. Ми були всі в роботі, звичайній нашій роботі. Ми були всі в своєму особистому житті, в сім'ях, в онуках. Я була в дітях. Ну, от наше звичайне життя.
That's the answer to the question, what was before, the before picture that Tetiana painted. She, just like everyone else, was fully involved in her work, in private life, in the kids, in the grandchildren, just like everyone else.
Can you describe or help us understand what the university actually looks like and what it is? It's in a city, it's in Dnipro, and how many students do you support there? Give us a picture of the university campus.
Tetiana's university is located in Dnipro. It's a large Ukrainian city located in the central eastern part of Ukraine, space capital of Ukraine, so space technology capital of Ukraine. It's quite a large city indeed. There are lots of people engaged in construction, engineering, but also arts, also transportation. It's a large transportation hub, namely. And yeah, it's quite a large place where people can find something for them. Each of professions could find something for themselves. The university, as we know it, the Ukrainian State University of Science and Technologies, was created or recreated in 2021 as a merger of two other larger universities.
Один був це Національний університет залізничного транспорту. Це самий великий університет, який діяльність якого вся була підпорядкована залізничній галузі.
One of them was the National University of Railroad Transportation. It was the largest in Ukraine, and not coincidentally was it located in Dnipro, a large hub.
І другий університет – це Національний металургійний університет. Він єдиний в Україні і теж він мав таку навіть в назві спрямованість чітко галузеву.
And the other university was also unique for Ukraine. It was a large metal processing university, so also quite industry-related, engineering-related. So the two of them merged into what is now known to all of us as the Ukrainian State University of Science and Technologies.
Тому до початку війни ми підходили якраз в стані об'єднання. Да, Міра?
So at the beginning of where they were in a very united state, but also in the process of still merging and trying to find a way to coexist further, to collaborate further.
Ну, от кожен наш університет має дуже багато спільного. Ми розташовані фізично в одному районі і навіть на одному проспекті.
Both universities already had a lot in common. They were located quite close to each other in one district, in one city district, and even sharing the same quite long street in the city of Dnipro. So they already had a lot going for them to actually merge together into this institution.
Обидві галузеві університети були створені 1930 року, коли розквітала в Радянському Союзі індустріалізація, і потрібні були саме інженерні кадри, бо Дніпро – це промисловий гігант, промисловий.
Both universities actually take roots in the 30s, almost 100 years ago. During the Soviet times, there was a big need for this kind of industrial specialist, engineering specialists, metallurgy specialists. Both of them were contributing to the industrialization of the country back in the days.
Біля 10 тисяч студентів у нас різні, на сьогодні це дуже різні рівні кваліфікації, це і коледжі, це і бакалаврат, магістратура, аспірантура. До складу університету входить декілька ще інститутів.
So the student community is quite diverse. At the moment they serve around 10,000 students, and the students represent all kinds of levels of education, college level, bachelor, master, PhD programs, but the university also unite a few institutes, a few specific branches.
А також у нас є єдиний в Придніпровському регіоні центр вищої освіти для інвалідів.
And they're also hosting the only place in the region, the only center in the region that is providing education to people with disabilities. Yeah. So that's about it. That's the picture.
Before the invasion, Tetiana already described projects and advancements in open educational resources and open science. Can she talk about what the interest and level of activity at her university was before?
Тетяно, ви вже згадували про те, що відкриті проекти і відкритість була, скажімо, ДНК вашого університету ще й до повномасштабного вторгнення. Чи могли б ви описати, що саме відбувалося вже в вашому університеті в плані відкритої освіти, відкритої науки також до 24 лютого, до початку повномасштабного вторгнення?
Да. Ну, так сталося, що ми перші в регіоні серед вищих навчальних закладів, де в 2009 році ми змогли умовити наших вчених, наше керівництво і започаткувати інституційний репозитарій. Це перший в регіоні був саме в нашому університеті, і він адмініструвався і підтримувався, і досі підтримується нашою бібліотекою. Це 2009 рік.
So the answer to this question goes back to 2009 when Tetiana and colleagues talked the university management and some university researchers into hosting an institutional repository, which was a big step towards the openness and towards open science. Back then, the library, the scientific library where Tetiana works and is the one managing and hosting that repository.
В 2011 році ми вже змогли запустити знов-таки перший в нашому регіоні журнал відкритого доступу. Це був філософський журнал, і ми його робили в партнерстві з факультетом гуманітарним, кафедрою філософії.
And so already in 2011, they managed to launch the first open access journal in cooperation with the Faculty of Humanities, the philosophy department. They were proud of this in their region, the first in the region. And today this journal still exists and it's being indexed in the Web of Science. So it's a continuous effort.
І далі майже кожного року, оскільки ми вже були кваліфіковані бібліотекарі з питань відкритості, то ми запустили ще 2 журнали, знов-таки в партнерстві з іншими факультетами. І всього на сьогодні бібліотека підтримує 3 журнали. Один з них – бібліотечний журнал, який індексується в Scopus. І, до речі, він єдиний теж в Україні.
And building this expertise, building this capacity, they were able to launch 2 more access journals. So in total, they are now supporting 3 open access journals. One of them is library-related, library-centered dedicated journal. It's being indexed in Scopus as well. And it's the only book journal in Ukraine related to library open access. So they're proud maintainers of that journals.
Ну і, безумовно, ми весь час робили якісь лібгайди питань відкритості. Ми працювали з викладачами. Вебінари – це звичайна справа, коли ми пояснювали викладачам, які можливості, які преференції можуть вони отримати, якщо вони в тому числі передають і архівують свої, наприклад, статті в репозиторії.
So they continued the efforts in the realm of openness by reaching out to teachers, to university instructors via LibGuides, via webinars and other type information sessions, explaining the added value of going open and archiving articles in the institutional repository as well. And so what they're also proud of is a series of short videos, short knowledge clips, 5 minutes, much longer, explaining many processes and concepts related to openness. For instance, how to submit your article into an open access journal, or how to find your way in a journal like that, or in a repository like that. So they have been actively investing into creating such pieces of information as well.
Ну і в 2019 році ми почали такі перші невпевнені кроки з того, щоб більш детально знайомитися з відкритими освітніми ресурсами.
And starting in 2019, Tetiana and her colleagues started their first real steps in the world of open education. So getting all the knowledge they've gained, they've mastered from the previous years that she's been describing, into this new unknown territory of OER and open education.
І тут на своє щастя я узнаю, що є Paola Корті така. І є така організація, яка називається Spark Europe. І є така спільнота бібліотекарів відкритої освіти, які, просто мене зачарували.
And luckily, just around that time, Tetiana runs into some information about the existence of Paola Corti, about Spark Europe, about NOL, the European Network of Open Education Librarians, and she was just enchanted by all of those.
Якщо буде питання, я далі вже буду трошки розповідати, наскільки неоціненною є допомога НОЛ, а ще я трошки забула сказати, що я є доцентом на кафедрі, я викладаю, я працюю зі студентами-аспірантами.
And Tetiana would also like to add that besides being the library director, she's also a university professor, university teacher. She works with PhD students and with other university professors. So she teaches as well. She's not only in the library, but also as part of the faculty, the academic staff of the university. She would also like, of course, to add about the cooperation with the NOL and Spark Europe, but probably you have a separate question about that. So she'll wait with that section.
І якщо говорити про студентів, аспірантів, то в мене є 2 лекції великі, саме про відкритість. І ми з ними, коли працюємо практично, то, безумовно, це обов'язково були практики відкритості.
So what Tetiana also did as a university lecturer, she integrated openness into the PhD curriculum. So the students she supervises and teaches also get to participate in at least 2 lectures on openness and on open practices. And she tries to integrate that in assignments as well, in their own practices. So she tries to practice what she preaches as a teacher as well.
That is impressive on its own. If it's okay to talk about February 24th, I gather Tetiana was home, but how did you stay connected? How were you able to get through this time with probably not electricity and internet? I would imagine some relied on cellular phones. I can't even imagine that experience. I've lost my electricity a couple days and I thought that was bad. But the idea of being in a bomb shelter and war and guns going on is so impressive and scary to me.
Алан зараз запитує, як ви, власне, зустріли 4 лютого, як воно вас, як ви його провели, і як вам вдалося триматися на зв'язку? Тому що він тільки може приблизно дуже далеко уявити, наскільки це важко, коли немає електрики, коли навколо літають бомби, відбуваються вибухи і так далі. Як ви тримаєтесь на зв'язку зі всіма, як ви працюєте, як ви взагалі даєте собі раду, ви чи колеги? Тому що Алан каже, що от, власне, в нього кілька днів тому вимкнули електрику, і він вже відчував досить безпомічним. Він не може уявити, що це дуже довго може тривати, як можна так довго протриматись, власне, в цьому питання.
Ми ж люди, ми звикаємо до всього. І наша здатність як людей – це здатність дуже швидко адаптуватися до всіх викликів. Ми не просто звикаємо, а ми знаходимо якісь, такі ходи, які можна використовувати, хай не так ефективно, але вони допомагають.
We are humans, we're human beings, we are super resilient and flexible, more than we think we are. And we are adaptable to new circumstances. And even when you think you're not, you will find a way or, some way to make it work. So that's what Tetiana's been doing all along.
Саме 24 числа, от я вже спокійно про це говорю, ми проснулися дійсно від вибухів, бо обстрілювали аеропорт Дніпра.
On the 24th of February, and Tetiana can now talk about it more calmly than she used to. Of course, it's easier a bit now. They were woken up by explosions, by the sounds of explosions, just like all Ukrainians. And in Dnipro, the airport was being bombed.
І тому що мій дім, я в приватному будинку живу, якщо їхати від мого дому машиною до аеропорта, то це, мабуть, 25 хвилин від сили.
She lives quite close to the airport, 25 minutes by car. So she lives in a house, and she was pretty much shocked by what she heard, but by what she experienced was happening really close to her.
І ми все зразу зрозуміли, бо я ж кажу, що така напруга, вона була зрозумілою, бо все ж таки нас готували до цього. Це було і від керівництва нашого університету такі застереження, і від керівництва держави. Але ніхто не вірив. Ну, тобто держава не казала прямо от 24-го чи там 25-го, чи чекайте, на нас обов'язково буде напад. Бо це було, дійсно, ми розуміємо, було паніка. Але от нас трошки до цього готували.
So on that day, they actually immediately understood what was happening. Of course, they were not living disconnected. They were following what was happening in the news. They were feeling the tension. So they were somewhat prepared because the caution was being announced by the university management, but also by the government as well. But nobody could truly believe that this was really going to happen. People were cautioned and warned, but still did not really expect and believe this would happen.
Ми отримали, в нас вже давно був один канал комунікації з ректоратом, бо ковід нас вже підготував до дистанційності.
So they had a secure channel of communication with university management, university board, because it has prepared them to the distance modes of teaching and learning. So they have had some tactics that already were working for them. Of course, immediately the emergency meeting of the university board, the university management team was announced, and they quickly formed an emergency operational team, a crisis management team that would be trying to navigate the situation.
В нашої бібліотеки, саме в нашої бібліотеки, і знов-таки ковід в цьому допоміг. В нас є група, як єдиний канал комунікації, як би будемо казати, офіційний, але ми спілкувалися весь час і іншими каналами комунікації.
So they had this one official channel of communication that Tetiana's mentioned, but besides that, they were using any other communication channel available just to stay in touch and to make sure everybody's doing okay.
На той момент у нас іще був зв'язок, і ми зразу домовились, що ніхто на роботу, звісно, не йде, а ми чекаємо, але ми домовились, що обов'язково от кожного дня ми виходимо на зв'язок. У кого що трапилося, ми повинні були знати і повинні були реагувати, бо от в мене, як директора, в мене головне завдання було в перші дні саме зрозуміти, що з колективом відбувається.
The first days, the first weeks were full of waiting, of course, checking in every day with each other. They, of course, didn't go to the office. They didn't go physically to the office. But the main task of Tetiana as the library director and the main task of everyone at the university was to make sure everyone was okay. Everyone was safe, alive, had connection with each other. So that was her main concern in the first weeks, of course.
Так ми узнали, що в нас одна співробітниця, вона живе саме в місті, куди перші, вона в воєнному містечку біля аеропорта проживає, і вони постраждали, от туди були перші удари, атака була, то в неї вікна повибивали, дом дрижав, тобто оце все, люди були дійсно налякані, тому вона поїхала з міста зразу поїхала з міста.
And that's how they found out, by staying in touch with each other constantly. That's how they found out what was happening to their employees, to the staff. So one of the colleagues lived really close to the airport that was attacked in the first hours of that day. And she, along with some other people, had to leave immediately. They left their place. It wasn't possible to live there anymore. The buildings were damaged. The windows were shattered. And they were trying to keep track of each other still, despite the circumstances.
Але чесно, навіщо, якби, тут немає про що замовчувати і брехати, бо ми дійсно були налякані. Ми були налякані, ми були розгублені. Тому перший день це було просто от таке розуміння того, що ми з колегами списалися, ми знаємо, що нам далі робити, наприклад, на другий день, але от саме в цей день ми займалися кожен своєю сім'єю.
But the reality is, the harsh reality is that everybody was scared. Everybody was afraid of what was happening. Everybody was feeling a bit lost, and they were living by the day. And the reality was that they were mainly trying to take care of their own family, of the people, of the university staff, but also of their own families, trying to make sure everybody's safe and secure.
Ну і далі вже було оголошено, що у кого є можливість, будь ласка, евакуюйтесь. Хто не може або не хоче їхати в більш небезпечні місця, то, будь ласка, постійно будьте на зв'язку.
So they decided pretty early on that everybody who wanted to or needed to should be evacuated, should leave. And in any case, they were asked to stay connected, to stay in touch, to make sure everybody knows how everybody's doing and that everybody's alive, and first of all.
І друге завдання, яке після того, як ми якби комунікаційно визначилися, що ми постійно на зв'язку, то далі в нас постала проблема, як нам зберігати те, що з нами створено от саме в цифровому плані. Оці всі наші сайти, оці всі наші журнали, контент-репозитарії, от що робити з цим, бо сервери, частина серверів вже готова була теж евакуюватися в більш безпечні місця.
And so the next issue they had to resolve, after making sure everybody's at least safe, they had to decide what to do with their digital infrastructure, what to do with their digital objects and digital repositories they've been working so hard on, whether they needed to evacuate servers that were hosting all that information, all those digital objects. So that was a big issue and a big challenge back at that time.
В нас такий стан, бо в нашій бібліотеці залишились працювати тільки жінки, тому, звісно, був такий у когось більше, у когось менше. Але отой стан, коли ти взагалі тобі страшно вийти на вулицю.
And so also the reality of that situation was that it's mostly women who were left working at the library, at the university, in those war conditions. And it was quite scary to get out of the house with air raid alarms happening every 30 minutes or so. We were hiding in bomb shelters. So Tetiana was lucky enough because she had a basement. Her house has a basement and she could use it as a bomb shelter. First of all, she ensured that her family is together with her and they could stay together. And those were quite cold months. February, March are quite cold months. They had to get out now and then to warm up, to get some tea, to get some kind of warmth and reception to connect with others. So those were pretty gruesome months and weeks to go through, of course.
Але ми от встигли буквально через кілька днів, ми вже прибігали з перебіжками, бо транспорт майже не ходив. Хто міг, тот приїжджав. Особливо приходили, я щиро вдячна тим, хто жив і живе, проживає недалеко від університету, бо ми змогли вирішити дуже важливі для себе завдання.
But already a few days after that, some of the colleagues started returning to the library, to the university, especially those who lived nearby or who could arrange a transportation because public transportation wasn't working back then. They had to return. They had to resolve some very crucial issues, some urgent tasks that they as a library had to take care of. And Tetiana is really grateful to her colleagues for their time and risking their lives literally while doing that.
Ну і бібліотекарі мене зрозуміють, що є така інструкція, згідно якої будь-яка ситуація така небезпечна, коли трапляється в житті бібліотеки, то перше, що повинен зробити бібліотекар, це винести в безпечне місце всі інвентарні книги.
And so other librarians would understand this as well, says Tetiana, Every librarian knows that there is a sort of like a manual what to do in emergency situations. And task number one is to try and rescue the books. Try and rescue the objects you have in your library.
Це такі талмуди, які зберігаються з моменту заснування університету, тобто з 1930-х років, і кожен рік поповнення книг – це робота з цими книгами. Вибування книг, писання – це теж робота з цими книгами. І незважаючи на те, що зараз, безумовно, у нас електронний каталог є, але в той же час оці книги в друкованому, а інвентарні книги в 30-му році і навіть вже до 70-х років вони велися отак от записували ручкою, ну це наше надбання, то ми їх повинні були зберегти, тому ми кожну книжечку упакували, комп'ютери спакували, і ми все це переносили в підземні сховища наші.
And so those inventory books that's talking about, because those inventory books are very valuable to them. They date back to 1930s, to when the institutes and the library were first established. So they took care of them immediately. First of all, they carefully wrapped each of them and took them into bomb shelters, took them into safer conditions, because those objects, those books contained a wealth of knowledge for them, but also their whole work was contained there. Besides, of course, having electronic registries and electronic repositories, those objects were still very important to them. So that was also happening.
Wow.
Ну,
Yeah.
це були перші дні наші.
Those were the first days indeed. That's how they managed to stay connected and in touch.
So I'm thinking about all the things they might be in the manual. Obviously, the preservation of artifacts. How did they go about contacting students and start to rearrange delivery of instruction?
Тетяно, як ви сконтактували з студентами, особливо в ці перші тижні війни, і як ви, що ви зробили з лекціями, з уроками, з курсами, як це далі відбувалося?
Ну, перший тиждень, безумовно, ніяких занять не було.
There was nothing, there were no classes in the first week after the full-scale invasion had begun, of course.
I would think, yeah, much longer.
Maybe you remember those early images from the first days, weeks of this war, when lots and lots of people were trying to get away by train. So there were lots of pictures from Ukrainian train stations with thousands of people trying to cram into those evacuation trains, trying to get away from dangerous parts of the country as soon as possible. The crisis management team of the university decided right away that they would recommend students to leave immediately, leave as soon as they have an opportunity. Their campus also includes 6 large dorms, and they are also multi-storied buildings, essentially quite dangerous. The students were urged to leave and go seek shelter if possible. Many of the students who go to this university are also from the region, Dnipro region, from the larger regions. A lot of them would live on campus.
І багато батьків під'їжджали прямо машинами під гуртожитки, забирали дітей і від'їжджали вже в райони Львівської області, Івано-Франківської, в район Закарпаття, або щоб залишитись саме в тих районах, або через ті райони вже виїжджати десь за кордон.
And so many parents of these students came by to pick them up and immediately drive to the west of the country, either to stay in the western regions bordering other countries like Lviv region, Ivano-Frankivsk region, Carpathian region, or to go further abroad. So many of them were just aggregating their children together with them. And so after 3 weeks, they already had an idea, had a better view over where the students are, and the communication was already established with them. So the course coordinators, the program coordinators knew where each student was, if they managed to evacuate or if they stayed behind in Dnipro. So they kind of had a good overview of what's happening to the student community as well. So approximately in the 3rd week, 3 or 4 weeks into this war, the library resumed its work fully online, of course, fully remotely, but it resumed its services and providing educational and research support to students and to staff. Of course, they were trying to do their best. Even in those circumstances, they were getting used to the new normal. They started adjusting. They were being flexible indeed. The reality was also that many of the colleagues from the library, but also many professors, many teachers went as volunteers to fight. to protect the country. So many of them left and joined the army, the armed forces of Ukraine.
Але бібліотека працювала спочатку саме для того, щоб перемістити свій контент або в хмарний сервіс, або ми домовлялися з колегами з інших проєктів, які започатковувалися з першого тижня культурного плану проєкти, щоб розмістити там частину своїх якихось вже створених продуктів. Ми дуже багато розмістили в Зінода, дуже багато. І головне, що от знаходились такі крейзі викладачі, які писали статті і які нам надсилали вже от йде 10 днів іде війна, а наші викладачі нам надсилають статті, бо в бібліотеці працювала як редакція, вона і працює нині, журнал «Наука та прогрес транспорту», Science and Transport Progress, і викладачі писали нам листи, дівчата, чи ви працюєте, чи можна вам надіслати статтю, чи буде вона готуватися до публікації. Це було 2 тижні, йде війна, а ми, безумовно, над цим працюємо.
So one of the big challenges for the library was to move the content in cloud-based environments, trying to use any tool or any platform they could find, talking also to other projects who were trying to help Ukrainians digitize and archive everything and move it into the cloud, but also using existing platforms like Zenodo, like many other known open access related platforms for doing this. And at the same time, they continued providing services to, so they were crazy, there were crazy enough researchers, as Tetiana calls them, who were emailing them 10 days into the war saying, hey, are you still providing research support, publishing support? Would like to submit an article into the Science and Transport Progress Journal. That's the journal the library is maintaining. So they were on the deadline and they were still keeping in touch and doing business as usual despite all the other circumstances. The work was just going on and they were supporting it. First, they had to function was constant blackouts, sometimes 8-hour long or more, with explosions, and that was affecting the function of the website and of their library system, of course. But after they would relaunch everything again after a long blackout, they would still see that students were placing electronic orders to keep on learning, to keep on connecting with the university, with the library. So that was very amazing in those times, especially.
I will say amazing that you're getting operational 3 weeks in. My head hurts thinking about that. And I was going to ask, is there something really special about librarians that keep your motivation going on resilience? And I know there is, but I'm thinking it's the Ukrainian spirit. This is a really powerful statement, the way you were prepared and responded so quickly. So my heart again goes out to everything that your nation did.
І Алан каже, що він не може собі навіть приблизно уявити, як ви відновили роботу так швидко після початку війни і в таких умовах неймовірних. Він каже, що він хотів спочатку запитати, чи, можливо, щось є таке особливе в бібліотекарях, які так самовіддано і стійко проходять через такі ситуації, але йому тепер здається, що, мабуть, це український народ настільки самовідданий і стійкий, який проходить через ситуацію війни, такою мужністю і з такою самовіддачею. Як ви думаєте, Тетяно?
Чесно, я не знаю. Ми, кожен із нас, це, мабуть, кожної людини, яка любить свій дім, свою країну, своє місто, свій сад, де скрізь твоїми руками посаджені квіточки. Для того, щоб все це захистити, то, відповідно, ми робимо все. Наша робота в даному випадку – це не тільки наш дім. Наше життя – це наша робота, наш університет. І коли ти розумієш, що ти робиш своїми руками, своїми мізками, своєю енергією, щось потрібне студентам, викладачам, і ти розумієш, що дійсно люди бачать, що ти потрібна як бібліотекарка, то це дозволяє рухатися. Це по-перше.
And that says that, of course, anyone who's trying to protect their home, their work environment, their environment in general, even their garden where they're growing their own flowers, people are trying to do what they can to survive no matter what, to be resilient. And their life is not just at home, it's not just private life. Work is also a calling and a big part of their life, indeed. And when you see that what you're doing is meaningful, highly needed, and requested by the community you're trying to serve, it gives you the energy and the opportunity to go ahead, to go further, to persevere, to go no matter what.
Ну, а по-друге, коли ми працюємо, коли ми відчуваємо, що ми потрібні, то ми відволікаємось. Наші мізки переключаються вже від оцих вибухів, від цього розуміння, що ти плачеш. Ну, ти не можеш сутками плакати. Я теж пройшла через цей стан, коли просто неможливо було себе заспокоїти. Але це переключення на роботу і повне занурення в роботу. І на фоні цього стресового стану відбувається народження якихось ідей, і ти бачиш якісь нові шляхи для того, щоб оминути те, що ти вже не можеш повернути, то це теж воно якби характерно для людини, і воно допомагає виживати і зберігати отакий, знаєте, емоціональний стан для того, щоб працювати далі.
And work also serves as a distraction to people, of course, your community, not just work in general, but serving your community as well. In order to go through all these explosions, tears, despair, you need to distract yourself, and preferably with something meaningful, something needed, something useful, such as the work that Tetiana and her colleagues are doing. And in that way, they also came up with lots of new ideas, creative path for achieving some new things. And that is quite motivating and helped them survive through those times, through that period.
Thank you so much. I don't want to keep Tetiana too much longer, but I just want to ask, how are things now? Because I feel like the world has moved on to other things and they're not paying as much attention to the Ukraine. And what kind of things through open education can we ask or urge people to do that would help Tetiana and her colleagues?
Lectures today, and very coincidentally, both on openness, both on open practices. That is what's happening today.
I wish I was there.
Хотів би бути там, хотів би відвідати їх.
І коли я в минулому році вже це був травень, це був квітень, травень, червень, то ми працювали зі студентами, я якби зараз кажу як викладач, ми працювали зі студентами, які знаходяться в різних країнах дистанційно.
And I met back last summer or at the end of spring, most of the students were still studying remotely, but also not just remotely, also from other countries. Many of them actually went abroad, fled abroad. That was the student audience that Tetiana and her colleagues were serving. Yeah, so Dnipro still remains a frontline city. The war action is happening right nearby, so they are still pretty much affected quite a lot by what's going on. And Dnipro is now also a large medical hub. They are also serving wounded soldiers and wounded support personnel, especially from places like Bakhmut, where now very active fighting is going on. So the university is functioning fully remotely too, for students and for teachers, for professors.
Але 90% викладачів, вони вже повернулися на роботу. Вони працюють в Україні.
90% of their teachers have already returned back to work, and they all work from Ukraine. Most of the students are back to Ukraine. Of course, those who went to fight, who joined the army, both students and professors, they get extension of their contracts or extension of their study programs. Many have returned, and Tetiana is also happy to say that the student numbers for the next study year, for the next academic year, are growing, and they will be large they were last year. So it's restoring a little bit, even in such difficult circumstances.
В нашому кампусі живуть майже 1000 внутрішньо переміщених осіб в університетському, і це ті, що з Луганської, Донецької області, з Маріуполя, з Херсона, з Миколаєва. Люди саме приїжджають в Дніпро, вони знаходять прихисток, і така велика кількість внутрішньо переміщених осіб, вона проживає в нашому університетському містечку.
So they're also donating their campus buildings to internally displaced persons, those from other regions of Ukraine that are now heavily affected by fighting, by the active war. People from Donetsk, Luhansk regions, people from Mariupol, from Kherson, from all those cities that are either currently occupied by Russia or have just been liberated by the Ukrainian army. And they are hosting them. Over 1,000 internally displaced persons are using the university as a place of living.
Але якщо викладачі і студенти працюють дистанційно, то бібліотекарі працюють фізично.
While the professors and students are working or studying remotely, the librarians come in person. They try to serve the community in person. They try to be there, to show up and be there.
Thank you. I had hoped we might talk about the connection with the librarians, but maybe we'll do that separately, add it to the article, because that's an important part of the story. But I can't thank you enough, Tetiana, for your time and sharing everything. And this is not too long. My wife's family here in Canada are descendants of Ukraine settlers. And I don't know if it's the right saying, but when we say to life or daiboja, when we take a drink of coffee or something else, so daiboja.
Алан каже, що його сім'я, його дружини, він в Канаді, власне, знаходиться, сім'я його дружини, українці в поколіннях, які переїхали до Канади вже давно, і вони використовують нашу приказку, чи наш зворот «Дай Боже». І от вам він хоче теж побажати «Дай Боже» вам і бібліотекарям. Він хотів би ще окремо якось поговорити, заторкнути тему саме роботи бібліотекарів. Тому дай Боже.
Дай Боже. Дякую.
І дякую за ваш час також і за ваш приділений час цій темі. Do we still have time to discuss?
Yeah, it's your time. I don't want to take too much time, but I will sit here all day.
Of course. Тетяна, якщо ви ще маєте час, то ми продовжимо трошечки розмову. Зараз я знаю, що ми вже переходимо за наш час, але всі готові ще залишитись і продовжити спілкуватися, якщо ви не проти.
Ні, я не проти.
Tetiana also gladly
приємне обличчя, да, безумовно.
Tetiana would like to continue the conversation if everyone is also on board and if you have some time to spare.
Oh, certainly. There's so many things that we would love to ask. And Tetiana talks so calmly about what seems as superhuman efforts. But again, are there open educational resources that are of need or certain areas of topics that her and her colleagues, I don't think they need help, but I would think maybe there are some things that we can do to assist and support their efforts.
Тетяно, Алан запитує, чи, можливо, є якісь відкриті освітні ресурси або якісь теми, в яких вам би знадобилася допомога від нашої спільноти. Власне, він також згадав, що тут присутні і Лорна Кембл із Шотландії, також Пол Стейсі, і інші люди, яких ви бачите серед аудиторії. Можливо, ми всі разом і ті, хто будуть слухати цей подкаст, можемо допомогти якось вашим бібліотекарям і вам також. Чи могли б ви зараз подумати, згадати про якісь відкриті ресурси чи якісь сфери в відкритій освіті, де вам могла б знадобитись допомога? В цьому Алан додав, що він думає, що, мабуть, вам жодна допомога не потрібна, бо ви і так неймовірно добре все робите.
Я, по-перше, вдячна за пропозицію. Я хочу сказати, що в нас такий, я навіть не знаю, як це сказати словами, але, можливо, якщо б не були в нас такі критичні кризові обставини, то справа з відкритими освітніми ресурсами, вона би рухалась набагато повільніше.
Tetiana, the irony of the situation is that the war actually accelerated the adoption of open education and OER. On the one hand, a desired outcome, on the other hand, the circumstances are far from ideal. So I Technically, the war is playing in favor of open education and says that this situation now is not comparable to the situation as it was in 2009 in terms of the development of the topic of open science, open education at their university. Because back then, when they were just starting, the teachers, it was quite difficult. The teachers were laughing. They were accusing them of trying to infringe on their intellectual property. Oh, why would I submit my article, or why would I do things in the open anyway? The situation has changed dramatically by now, despite everything.
От зараз в нас точно така ситуація, коли ми пояснюємо про відкриті освітні ресурси, про їх переваги, наскільки вони важливі не тільки коли фізично недоступні наші колекції друкованих видань або цифрові локальні колекції, але і тут додаткова отака надстроєчка є, коли нам не вистачає ресурсів українською мовою, саме підручників українською мовою.
And so Tetiana says that that situation is much better for open science, open access publishing in general, but they are experiencing some similar waves in terms of open education and OER, explaining the added value, the benefits they bring. And it's especially crucial, or it especially helps to capture teachers' attention when they face a lack of Ukrainian language educational resources, educational materials. So that is one big need that they are facing, that they're having, and that's where she thinks open education could be an answer. OER could be an answer. And Tetiana would like to give the floor to Paola to contribute to this, because I could tell a few words about what Tetiana is actually doing right now together with our humble help prepare a list of their needs that they would like to ask the broad community to collaborate on. Paola, the floor is yours. The microphone is yours.
Thank you. No, it's just something that we started a while ago, because many people started reaching out and ask, how can I help? Which is wonderful. And in the spirit of the open education community, this is happening also now, which is wonderful again. And we started very practically to list some needs that Tetiana is revising, so that we can look very practically to picture that the situation and start from what is needed immediately during the war, and hopefully in mid-term, when soon this war will be over, so that the moment to reconstruct comes, and then long-term to advance open education and its connection to open science, and more broadly, not only in an institution. So we are going back to this document here and there, and our plan is to share it as openly as possible soon. Also because many of the needs that Tetiana is listing might be felt also by other librarians around Ukraine. And I wouldn't limit this list to Tetiana's needs. She's very thoughtful when she thinks about you hear her. So when she thinks about the needs of students, of teachers and researchers, it's not only because the war is ongoing, it's also in general. And the benefits of open education are very clear to Tetiana, and that's what she's doing. It's amazing.
Тетяна, Павла, власне, розповіла про цей список потреб, які ми готуємо, але також сказала, що, звичайно, ми також дивимося на коротко, на середню і на довготривалу перспективу. І також, що ви дуже чуйно до цього підходите. Ви не лише там свої якісь потреби перераховуєте, але ви думаєте про студентів, про викладачів, про ваших колег, про ширшу спільноту з відкритої освіти. І вона, Павло, хотіла б на цьому наголосити, і що ми продовжуємо повертатися до цього списку потреб і радістю поділимося з ним зі спільнотою.
І якщо можна, я би, якщо є така можливість, для нас, от саме для бібліотекарів, іноді не вистачає прикладів, які я читаю з колегами щодо того, як можна створити в більш короткі терміни новий якийсь підручник, використовуючи вже існуючі відкриті освітні ресурси. І от якби була конкретна університетська бібліотека, яка працює в цьому напрямі, і хтось міг би, в тому числі, розповісти і бібліотекарям, і, можливо, викладачам нашим, як проходить процес, чому от такі застереження, які, безумовно, що вони будуть. Чому бояться викладачі створювати відкриті освітні ресурси і використовувати для цього вже існуючі?
And Tetiana would like to ask for a specific example of support that the community, the older open education community, could give her and her colleagues to have a shout out to those universities and those libraries that already have experience of creating and remixing OER open textbooks in very short-term circumstances and also in times of crisis. And I guess that there will be some, especially after the corona pandemic, who would share their experience with how they launched everything so quickly, how they managed to explain the added value of open education and OER to their teachers, but also to other librarians so quickly. How did they manage to fight the barriers that many teachers still have to using other openly licensed content, but also creating and sharing their own? So if there are any examples of such initiatives and successful projects, but also maybe brilliant failures too, to learn from, she would be really happy to hear from colleagues, and she would invite them to talk to her, to the librarians, but also to the teachers, to the authors.
We will definitely try to do that. And I'm just thinking earlier in the week, I did a podcast with Delmar Larson at LibreText, and they did a machine language translation of their entire library. And if there's new content that or subject areas that need covering, I am sure Delmar would be interested in importing that and getting that translated into Ukraine. I imagine that's the biggest thing is good content in Ukrainian language.
Тетяно, власне, Алан каже, що буквально кілька днів тому він розмовляв із Делмаром Ларсон з LibreText щодо їхнього проєкту, і він згадував про те, що вони масово перекладають наявні відкриті підручники на українську мову, українською мовою, використовуючи машинний переклад. То, власне, він вважає, що, скоріш за все, для LibreText взагалі буде не проблемою швидко перекласти щось потрібне вам, і вашому університету, і вашим колегам у короткі терміни. На додачу, I was referring to such type of offer and try and cite for machine-assisted translation indeed. So thanks a lot, Alan, for your offer.
And also, I don't want to focus too much on content, but if there are ways we can connect Ukrainian teachers and librarians who want to discuss more about pedagogy and practices and ways to be more effective, we would like to be and help in any way as well.
І Алан також пропонує.
Mira is gone, and I'm unable
back.
to translate, and that's what happens here and there.
I'm back.
Okay.
Welcome back, Mira.
Okay, sorry. This is a great example of what happens. That's okay. I will think I will do a wrap because we've been here a long time. And just дай Боже, Tetiana. And this is just my closing. I don't know if we have to translate this, but thank you for listening to this episode of OEG Voices. This is a podcast produced by Open Education Global. And each episode, we feature different musical track from the Free Music Archive. And today we have a music called War Mode, which actually has kind of like a reggae beat to it by an artist named Kirk Osamayo. And it's licensed under Attribution Creative Commons license. And this episode will appear as soon as I can edit at voices.oeglobal.org. And we'll have follow-up conversations if we can in OEG Connect. And thank you so much, Tetiana. You are amazing. You are my hero, and I just cannot congratulate you enough for the work you've done.
I translated using machine translation your text, Alan, and sent it to Tetiana directly. That's what we do.
That's what we do. We improvise.
Exactly.
I was looking up beforehand how to pronounce hello, and I failed a little bit, but okay.
No, but with Tetiana it's easy. She's always she's amazing.
She's the definition of this word.